Hi there, YouTube. This video is long overdue, but I just couldn't make myself sit down do it properly. Sorry about that. First and foremost, I have to make a disclaimer. No, I don't have a degree in economics, and I was pretty bad at school. So before spamming me with, negative comments and such, ask yourself the ever important question: what the fuck does this guy know? Smoking my 7LA 303 George Warden with McClellan Taste Master, what's left of it. Thoroughly dry. I'll be looking at the watch on the wall. Sorry about that. Also, I'll divide this video into several segments because my phone doesn't have enough memory. So it'll be 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and 10 minutes, hopefully. Also, I'll be looking at my notes because I tend to, drift off quite a bit. So this video in a nutshell, take this with a grain of salt, like that big. Anyways, this video was sparked by a comment made by Portland Pipe Smoker on one of my videos. By the way, this guy is awesome. Go subscribe to him. He's pretty easy to find. In which he said that the United States economy is not that much different from the Soviet economy nowadays. I was puzzled, asked him to elaborate, and he said that, well, basically, the big corporations are, as usual, trying to influence the market to the best of their capabilities, and more than that, they're trying to merge with the state and take the state into their structure. And although I can see a similarity and appreciate the irony, I cannot fully agree that there's a real similarity between the two economies. So, well, both systems, as any economy really tries to mess up with the the general public, but in my opinion, the Soviets did that in a very particular way, and it affected people in a particular way. So here's my small brief on the Soviet economy and the lasting effect that it had. Well, at least the one that I am still observing nowadays. First and foremost, we must take into account the history of the Soviet Union and its economic system, because many supporters of the Soviet economy and the Soviet, many fans of the Soviet era claim that Soviet economy didn't get to flourish really because they went from the revolution and the civil war, whereby they utilized something that is called war communism or military communism, basically, a martial law in the economy. Through a brief period of what was called the NEP, New Economic Policy, straight into the planned economy, which was interrupted by the Second World War. Then it went into a period of stagnation and came out of it through perestroika and collapse of the Soviet economy in general, and the establishment of the delightful economic jungle we're living in right now. So I'll narrow down my story to the most prominent phase of the Soviet economy, which is the planned economy. And what is that? Well, basically it, strangely enough, for the Soviet period, when many things were not what they seemed to be, what they claimed to be, what they were called. Planned economy is basically what it says on the tin. The economy that adheres to the plan set by the government. That is the polar opposite of the free market economy, which goes through the balance of supply and demand. Plus, as Portland Pipe Smoker pointed out, there's always, the producer and the bigger players in the market trying to meddle with everybody else and gain the upper hand. But the planned economy was based on basically three big government agencies, which were the Gosbank, the State Bank of the USSR, the Gosplan, the State Planning Commission, and the Gossnab, the State Commission of Supply. Running the whole economic system and formulating the general plan. So imagine that. A state agency has to organize the whole distribution of goods throughout the Soviet Union, and B, which is even more fun, it has to make a forecast, a prediction, an estimation of everything everything the population will need in the next reporting period. Year, 5 years, something like that. Now, if you imagine the USSR as a country, big territory, multitude of climates, multitude of communities, huge load of people, big population, and you take into account the fact that there were no computers, no processing power apart from the brain power to model the situation, take into account all the factors. Probably your prediction will be that the possibilities for everything to turn into a gigantic clusterfuck are endless. They were, and basically that's what happened. So what does it mean in practice, for an average Joe? Say you're, a worker at the factory, or an agricultural worker, working the fields. You get a plan from the, owner, or the director, or something like that. But here, this is basically the normal part. Everything else gets weird, because usually when you formulate a plan, what will the factory produce, how it will produce it. You operate with the given capabilities. What, resources do you have? How are you going to use them? And certain predictions and different factors. How do they influence the production in this particular period? In the USSR, two more factors were taken into consideration. First of all, it's the factor of ideology and propaganda, and second of all, something I call the loon factor, or the delusion factor. First is understandable, because the Soviet Union at least to its leaders, was not only a functioning state and functional population, it was also a showcase of this particular model of economy and model of state. The idea was to show the whole world that socialism equals progress, and it was the way to, basically, for as Soviet ideology put it, it was the only logical way of development for any state. So, socialism, and then communism as the pinnacle. As a result, the USSR always had something to show the world, and they were very much fixed on numbers. All the news, was all about the numbers. During this reporting period, we produced that much coal, steel, and as a logical consequence, the industrial leap was that big. We did this. So the fixation on numbers was understandable, because numbers are easy to show, big numbers, big news, easy to show and relatively easy to obtain. And those numbers also dictated what branches of the economy took the first seat, so to speak. Reporting, we produced that many washing machines, it doesn't sound as important as we produced that much coal, or that much steel. So, the production of raw materials, the heavy industry, and definitely the military complex, they were the priority. Everything else came afterwards. As you might have guessed already, if you are working towards numbers, that will be reflected in the plan. So you will get, all the Soviet, factories, mines, oil refineries, They were always supposed to be getting more and more and increase production. And it also leads directly into the second factor, the loon factor. See, because it was so much, propaganda driven, the plan might be unrealistic, to say the least. To give you a good example will be the 1957, where there was a meeting of the or rather a speech of the then General Secretary Nikita Khrushchev, who basically stated that the production of raw meat was lacking, and he basically ordered everyone to triple the production of raw meat within the next 3 years. Imagine that. No consideration of the factors, no consideration of is that even possible, because the industry is working, cattle is grown, then it is slaughtered, meat is produced. Everything is working at full capacity, and you are asking them to triple the production. Which is the most disturbing thing is that at least one oblast in Russia, Ryazanskaya Oblast, did that. They tripled the production in the next 3 years. It turned out at the end that they just slaughtered all the cattle they had. They threw the breeding programs out of the window, they slaughtered everything just to get the necessary amount of meat. It led to the investigation, and as far as I know, the head of the oblast just basically shot himself. He committed suicide in the end. But they were willing to commit. So that's the kind of delusions that were present at the planning stage and at the fulfillment stage. Plus, factories were supposed to over-fulfill the plan. It was, a natural state of things. The plan should be fulfilled and fulfilled and over-fulfilled. There was also a thing called the socialist competition, whereby one factory said that we'll give you, a certain number of certain volume of production, and the other factory said we'll double that, and they were basically competing to get more. That was seen as a healthy thing, but something must give in this equation naturally, and it was usually the quality control. If the production was not, military spec, all the players in the Soviet Union know that you are not supposed to buy anything at the end of the reporting period, because it will be crappy to say the least. They will be pushing towards numbers and just paying no attention towards the quality control and the quality of things that were actually being produced. So that was fun, I imagine. It also very much influenced the attitude of Soviet people towards their own production. Everything that, by some chance arrived from abroad was, everyone assumed that the quality was better. And it usually was, unfortunately. Another thing not many probably know about the Soviet Union is that was, strange enough, it was difficult to lose a job. Again, ideology comes into play, because Soviet Union claimed that they have eradicated unemployment. And they done it in the suitably, blunt way. Unemployment was basically it was basically made into a criminal offense. There was a separate, clause in the criminal offense code. In Russia it was called tунеядство. And basically these people were dubbed, social parasites, and prosecuted accordingly. And also the Soviet state didn't particularly encourage the physical mobility of its members, citizens. I just enjoy the argument that some Soviet fans from abroad give. They usually say, well, at least the Soviets gave the land to the peasants. It was indeed one of the slogans using which they came into power. Land to the peasants. Factory to the workers. What these people don't say, for some reason, is that there was a miraculous, outstanding thing called the collectivization of, agricultural complex. Whereby peasants were attached and combined into something called kolkhoz, collective, how shall I put that, collective farming, something like that. Well, in practice, what it meant is that since 1932, for the long period, peasants were not issued passports at all. Basic documents that defines you as the citizen. You're working the land, you're not getting any. You are a permanent attachment to your kolkhoz. You cannot leave the territory. Without a note given by your superior. You cannot go anywhere. You cannot switch the place. You cannot move. Same thing goes for the, basically for everybody else. In a way it still is. Here's my passport. Russian citizen. First page is, my photograph and my basic details. Second page. See that? You know, very light stamp. This is my place of residence. I'm registered at my place of residence, and if I change that, I need to register it as well, get another stamp. Nowadays, it's just a formality, and if you're not, you know, some worker who comes from abroad to work here, from some former Soviet republic, you know, in reality it's not a problem. But according to, you know, if you follow the law by the letter, I should make a new registration each time I rent a new apartment. Again, low mobility. In the early years of the USSR, it was even more prominent. Another beautiful example, in the 1940, just before the war, the USSR had to yet again increase their production capabilities for the military effort. So they amended their labor code, and they removed voluntary resignation entirely. Don't like your job? Tough luck, you cannot change it. You cannot move to a different place. You're stuck. At your job, at your place, you can only make a career and advance. So all these, you know, factors I mentioned contributed to people, in my opinion, greatly losing their initiative. Because you are supposed to work towards something, you know, have some choice for starters, have some motivation. We'll talk about that later. And that's, in my opinion, the reason why USSR in the end sucked so hard at all the technological stuff, you know, inventions, production of high-tech products. Because, you know, thinking and inventing demands, you know, certain freedom. And I mean no disrespect to the people, to my ancestors that worked in the Soviet Union. It creates sort of a nice environment for, I don't want to say slacking off, but, you know, going through the motions instead of actually working your ass off. So you come to work, you do your best to fulfill the plan. If you don't fulfill the plan, you know, your superiors are usually blamed for that. You will be penalized in a certain way, but you cannot lose your job. They won't fire you, because usually there won't be a replacement, because there's no place to take replacement from. So there's no competition. If you produce shitty products, you know, the consumers just have to deal with that. And you are just working throughout your life till the end, and that's that. Change that again, sorry. One more thing. Let's say you're a decent worker. You want to work to make your, you know, father and mother proud. to make your state a better place for everyone. You steal. You still need some basic motivation. So you have no choice. You're stuck at your workplace. What choice do you have, really? Well, first, there's the promotion. So you can get better at what you do, go up the ladder. Maybe they'll let you leave the town. It was a possibility, but you can only do that through the party, because each factory was attached to the cell of the Communist Party, Socialist Party, and all the advances were closely monitored by the party. So again, not only do you have to work hard, but you have to go through the motions. All the demonstrations, the meetings, having a good profile. But there's a possibility, aside from that. Privileges and bonuses were present again, but they were... See, Soviets were supposed to be equal, mostly. So they were usually, all the bonuses were either non-material, medals, fancy titles, etc. There were, again, there were vacation packages. There were, some goods that could be gifted to the particularly fancy worker, but you can bet your ass that your direct superior will get more, and the head of the factory will get even more. Say you are getting, paid vacation, your superior will get a paid vacation as well, and the head of the factory will probably be getting a new car, something like that. So it's not really motivating, in my opinion. And the most simple type of motivation, a raise or a bonus, like money. And here's where it gets extremely weird, and you have to, twist your mind a little bit to comprehend that. I said it already, Soviets were supposed to be equal. And, which is even more important, you work your, butt off, you get the money, you get the bonus. Where do you spend it? On what? And here's where it gets interesting. Usually, in the market economy, earning more money means getting more stuff. Not so much in the USSR. Throughout its history, the USSR suffered from a shortage of different goods, or as the Soviet people called it, the deficit. It was caused by many factors. Well, the two main ones I can come up with right now at the top of my head. First of all, the planned economy. You see, the market economy goes after the paying customer, sorry. You pay, we produce. You pay more, you consume more, we produce more. the USSR went according to the plan, which, as I mentioned before, was the military complex, the heavy industry, and everything that basically looked good and gave good numbers in the reports. Everything else was, left by the wayside. And also don't forget the clusterfuck. Again, huge territory. Elaborate plan. Something is bound to give. And it did, The logistics were screwed. There were situations where, goods were produced and were just rotting away at the warehouse because, there were no trains, for example, to transport them to the stores. So deficit was present throughout the history of the USSR. How bad was it exactly? Well, we used to have coupons, but not the discount coupons. They were basically, this coupon allowed you to buy a particular type of good. Either you exchange it for the good, like during the war, or it just gave you the right to purchase something. But in some regions, these coupons existed right up to 1992, where the prices were famously let go by Mr. Yeltsin. It was a disaster in itself, but a topic for another time. Plus you had the black market, definitely, screwing everything up. So, even if you got the money, you still need to get stuff. Getting stuff was a skill in itself, and it was a separate verb and a feat in the Soviet era. He can get stuff. Through acquaintances, someone who knows someone who knows someone getting stuff. So either you got stuff, or you were searching for the stuff, hunting for it basically throughout the stores, because, it was a thing of, mythological proportions. People were making, songs and anecdotes about that. I like this one. Don't you have meat in the store? No, we don't have meat. We don't have fish at this section. They don't have meat at the section over there. So there was no way really to predict when a certain type of goods, a certain type of stuff will appear or disappear from the store. There were general, rules. Big cities got more because these settlements were separated by several categories, and depending on the category, it received certain amount and certain types of goods. And almost anything was possible. I'm not speaking about just luxury items or some rare stuff, specialized stuff. We're talking food, like bread, meat. What did I write here? Meat, sausages. Another beautiful anecdote. How do you Soviet people slaughter your cattle? Just with a knife? You electrocute them? I don't know. Last time I was in the store, I saw, a couple of horns, couple of hoofs, an occasional tail. I think we are using explosives. Just blowing the kettle up. People were having trouble finding clothing, footwear, you know, matches, fucking toilet paper. Another anecdote, I love this. Where did you buy that toilet paper? I didn't buy the toilet paper. I'm bringing it back from the dry cleaners. Some smaller places didn't receive anything at all. You know, some types of goods were not available there, period. You know, or they disappeared en route. And another funny thing, you know, when you don't have something in your, you know, area, which is the simplest solution, you go by yourself, go to another, you know, town, load a truck of the stuff, get back, just sell it to people. Simple. That was called speculation in the USSR, and it was also a criminal offense. You could end up in jail for reselling stuff. So people were basically traveling to shop for goods, you know, for themselves. There was an amazing concept in Moscow area. It was called sausage trains, and I don't mean train that looks like a sausage. I mean a train full of people who come from the Moscow Oblast, you know, the suburbs and surrounding area, to the city to buy sausages. Because these were, you know, good meat products or meat pie products that were easy to store. So people were hoarding them, basically. People were standing in lines, and lines were, you know, another thing of myth. You know, lines in Moscow and St. Petersburg, they were amazing. You could spend a life in the line, you know. There were all kinds of, you know, amazing stuff happening. You know, people were getting in the line and then asking the question, why are we standing? You know, people were selling places in lines. There were occasions of people standing in lines, taking turns, getting into line in the evening, so coming the night before. It was amazing. It was completely ridiculous. And it got to the point where in big cities people were issued specific documents, and only by presenting this document you were allowed to shop, say in Moscow. So if you come from another town to shop and you don't have a paper, they won't sell anything to you. So that's kind of, you know, fun thing again. Then you have, naturally, with a lack of goods, you have the black market. Going through the back door is always, you know, easier. Hence, there was, you know, an endless variety of people making profit on other people's misery. From resellers that weren't afraid of criminal prosecution to, you know, shops writing off products as unfit and just for sale, which was pretty easy considering the quality control at the factory is crap. Then selling them with no reporting, you know, at higher prices, to, you know, whole factories working and selling part of their products, you know, to the side. Of course, the officials were involved and profited from that. Corruption was incredible. That all contributed. It was, brewing. So again, if you're working at the factory, you're either in it or you're denied, access to anything. And parallel to all this, we have the people who had privileges, where there were, legit categories of people who had privileges, like, like I said, people who were amazing at what they did, the heroes of the state. Like, they have recently published a beautiful document according to which Yuri Gagarin, our cosmonaut or astronaut, the first man to venture into space, he received his medals on the title, but he also received, a bunch of, goods, a bunch of stuff, and his, relatives were issued a bunch of stuff, and these are not just, some luxury items. They are just, boots, suits, house for his parents, etc., etc. There were other categories. I love this concept. There were separate stores for different categories. Store where you could get rid of the foreign currency you have somehow acquired. For example, you had a trip abroad. There was also specialized stores for the newlywed, or for, everything connected to marriage. And you could only get into this store by having applying for, registration of marriage to the state chamber, to the ZAGS. I showed that in one of my previous videos. So some people actually applied for marriage registration in order to get to this shop. Imagine pitching this idea to a girl, honey, I would very much like to, buy a gold ring. Can we just apply for, a marriage registration, and then we'll shop and then we'll cancel it? Beautiful. But that's all fun and games. The people who had real privileges were, of course, people of the party. Members of the party, members of the diplomatic corps, people who, were working abroad. They had separate stores just dedicated to them. You show your paper, you go in, you buy something that no one else can buy. High-ranking officials within the party, had specific resorts that were closed for everybody else. They had access to vehicles, because selling cars is just another story entirely. If you want, I can make a separate video on that. That was, hilarious and horrifying in a number of ways. These people are not, they were not existing in a vacuum. They were, people were seeing that, all Soviets are supposed to be equal, yet the higher you get within the party structure, the more stuff you get and the more access you get to this stuff. So all this, the situation that you cannot get stuff, even if you work for it, the situation that you have to go through different motions to get something, or to go on vacation, or to buy, boots for your child, to buy bread or toilet paper, or, a coat or a hat, all the while listening to reports of the amazing achievements of the Soviet economy and seeing people just getting everything you cannot get. That all was brewing inside, and was a lot of, as George Carlin put it, free-floating hostility within the society, in my opinion. I think that's what, the psychologists call the cognitive dissonance, the opposition between what you are supposed to feel and the information you receive, and the state of things that you perceive with your own eyes. So the room for hatred was, huge. You hate the sellers that don't give you stuff. You had the others that get more, who can get more, who can get stuff. You definitely hate the privileged ones, and you envy them. And it's unhealthy, Night has passed. I have to reshoot this last segment because I understood that I was talking and I didn't come to any conclusion. So this is the second night. That's not Tuesday yet, technically, so no reason to congratulate you on Cop Tuesday. What I wanted to say is basically my almost an hour long rambling seems to be very unpatriotic, said made a lot of bad examples, but that's history. It really happened. Some of those things I saw myself. Some of those things, my relatives went through those. The lines, writing in pen, writing the number in the line on the hand. Long hours. Pupils receiving US-made powdered milk at school. We didn't know what to do with this stuff. I just ate it with a spoon. So coming full circle to what Portland pipe smoker said. Like I said, both any economy is a lot of messing with people and screwing people over. But in my opinion, the USSR, with its political system and their approach to government, they were screwing with their population on a whole different level. There was a whole different weight category, the heavyweight meddling. So, like I said, I can appreciate the irony of people in the US thinking that their system is somewhat similar to the Soviet one, but it's still market economy. You can still sort of predict what are the big companies, what their goals are. Well, usually it's just profit, and it's at least understandable. What is not understandable to me is many people who are remembering the Soviet period fondly. Many of those people were not even born, but they think there was some sort of golden age of our country. Well, we are either hypocrites or they just have a pretty selective memory, or they're just bitter and cannot adjust to the present day situation because their claims are always the same, They remember just, the good stuff, the free medical care, health care, the free housing, the quote-unquote equality. And nowadays they say it's just too expensive. We cannot afford anything. You can't have anything. It's too expensive. There's a difference between I can't have something and I won't have something. Say there's a very expensive restaurant near my office where I work, like really expensive. I cannot go there. That's not true. I can, save up, pull my resources together, take a loan, I can go there, really. I won't do that. That's too expensive. That's unreasonable. But I can. I won't buy a car. I don't need it. But I can do that. On the other hand, having a restaurant specifically for the, members of the government, and you're guaranteed to be kicked out, no matter, who you are. That means you can't go there. Having a certain, brand of a car that only certain people are allowed to have, that means you can't have it. That's the meaning of I cannot. These people seem to be forgetting this. Or they just love to think about the past. I'll leave you with a final anecdote about this, people being fond of the past. Grandpa, when was the life better? When Stalin was the head of the government, or now? Definitely the Stalin times were better. How come, grandfather? There was a war, and everyone was in jail, and they were just making heavy machinery and not doing anything for the people. Boy. When Stalin was in power, I used to get a hard-on. I thank you very much, people, for watching through this. If someone is still are, I thank Portland Pipe Smoker for such a great topic. I beg your pardon sincerely for me rambling for over an hour, I think. By now, I promise next video will be shorter, hopefully. Thanks very much for dropping by, and I'll see you real soon with another one of my videos. Until then, see you people. Goodbye.